Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to admit, looking at the stack of research we have for today, I feel like I'm about to walk into a battlefield. But, you know, a battlefield where everyone is surprisingly attractive and the swords are essentially metaphors for repressed longing.
It is a battlefield, in a sense.
Yeah.
But it's probably one of the most profitable battlefields in the entire publishing industry.
We are talking, of course, about enemies to lovers.
The big one.
And before you roll your eyes and say, oh, I know this one, it's just two people bickering, just stop. Because that's what I thought, too.
Other people do.
I thought it was just a simple, a simple trope. But after going through the data you pulled, the Goodreads lists, the BuzzFeed analysis, the deep cuts from the Nerd Daily, I realized I was completely wrong.
Yeah.
This isn't a trope, it's an ecosystem.
Exactly. It's a massive literary economy.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that if you zoom out and look at the metadata, the tags people are using, the search terms on BookTok,
Yeah.
you see that enemies to lovers isn't a monolith.
Not at all.
It has splintered. It has evolved into 4 very distinct, very intense subgenres that I think cater to completely different psychological needs.
That's the part that just blew my mind. We aren't just talking about, I hate you, let's kiss.
No, it's way more nuanced than that.
We're talking about 4 specific pillars. We've got the fantasy realm, which is, it's currently dominated by what the internet unironically calls Sarah J. Maas clones.
And they're not wrong.
We have the modern rivalry sector, which is all about workplace competence and ex-lovers and, all that baggage.
The spreadsheet wars.
The spreadsheet wars, exactly. We have the historical pillar, the polite society tension, and then we have the dark romance corner.
Which is where things get, let's just say, psychologically complex.
Scare-roused was the term the research used. I'm still unpacking that one.
It's a journey.
It is a journey, but here is the mission for today's deep dive. We are going to break down these 4 pillars. We're going to look at the specific books defining them right now in 2026.
No, what's trending?
And we're going to try to answer the big question, why? Why are we, as readers, so obsessed with characters who seem to genuinely want to kill each other? What is it about that specific flavor of conflict that makes us turn pages at 3 in the morning?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think the answer really changes depending on which pillar you're standing in.
Oh, so?
Because the reason you root for a literary agent to fall for her rival editor is, well, it's fundamentally different from the reason you root for a young woman to fall in love with the vampire lord who just conquered her kingdom.
The stakes are just a little bit different there.
Just a little.
One involves a tense quarterly review. The other involves, eternal damnation.
Precisely. But the emotional engine,
Yeah.
the actual mechanics of that transition from hate to love, that core mechanism is surprisingly consistent across all 4.
All right, let's get into it then. I want to start with the biggest beast in the jungle.
Okay.
The fantasy sector, because looking at the numbers, looking at the sheer volume, this is where things are just exploding.
It is. And you really can't talk about fantasy enemies to lovers without addressing the elephant or maybe the high fae in the room.
You would say the name.
We have to talk about the Maas effect.
Sarah J. Maas.
Yes. Now, usually when we talk about a genre, we talk about broad trends, right? Movements.
Yeah.
But in our research, we found a specific user-generated Goodreads list that was literally titled Sarah J. Maas Clones.
That is just wild to me. It's not fantasy romance with fae. It's not high-stakes fantasy. It's books that feel like this one specific author.
And that list had over 112 books on it when we checked. And they were all put there by readers. That means over 100 authors are either consciously or unconsciously writing variations on a very specific dynamic that she popularized.
So let's dig into that for a second. For the listener who maybe hasn't read A Court of Thorns and Roses, which BuzzFeed flags as the absolute archetype here, what exactly is being cloned? Because it's not just there are fairies or there's a magic system.
No, it's a very specific structural setup. Think about the mid-2010s for a minute. Think about The Hunger Games or Twilight.
Okay.
In those books, the main love interest, your Peeta, your Jacob, was the safe harbor.
Right.
They were the nice ones, the ones who kept the protagonist grounded and safe.
The golden retriever boyfriend, as the internet calls it.
Exactly. The Maas effect completely inverted that. In this clone archetype, the love interest isn't the safe harbor. He is the danger.
He's the storm.
He's the storm. He is the High Lord of the Night Court. He is the villain in everyone else's story.
So it's the classic Hades and Persephone dynamic. Is that what we're looking at?
It is Hades and Persephone, but like weaponized for a modern audience. The setup usually involves a human, or at least a less powerful female protagonist, who does something she shouldn't. She kills a magical creature, she breaks an ancient treaty.
An inciting incident.
A huge one. And the penalty is that she is dragged into the magical world, there's your forced proximity, and held captive by this dark, morally gray, incredibly powerful male figure.
And captive is a key word there, isn't it?
It is absolutely crucial because it creates immediate, high-stakes conflict. She hates him because he is her jailer. He's often the leader of a nation or a court she's been taught her entire life to fear.
So the enemy part of the equation isn't just, a misunderstanding or a personality clash.
No, it's geopolitical. It's species-level hatred sometimes.
And the sources suggest that this is what raises the emotional payoff so high. Because if you can get a vampire lord who, looks at humans as basically cattle to fall in love with you specifically, that is the ultimate power trip.
It is. It's not just about romance. It's about taming the monster. It's the validation of being the one exception. This feeds directly into another micro-trope we saw tagged everywhere.
Which one?
The "who did this to you" trope.
Oh, explain that one. I saw that tag in the notes, but wasn't totally sure what it meant.
It's a scene that appears in almost all of these books, a real defining moment. The heroine is hurt or threatened by a third party, different villain. The enemy love interest sees it, and he goes absolutely feral.
Oh.
He destroys the threat with overwhelming, terrifying force. And that moment signals to both the heroine and the reader that while he is a monster, he is now her monster.
But, okay, I can see why that sells books. I absolutely get that. And looking at the 2026 landscape, this formula is still just printing money.
It's everywhere.
We saw a spotlight on a book called These Immortal Vows by Kelsey McKnight.
Yes, this is a perfect example of the current market. It's the first in a series called Bound by Blood.
Very subtle.
Very subtle, yes. But just look at the demand. It was a February 2026 release, and the Goodreads giveaway had over 2,800 people requesting one of just 100 copies.
That is a staggering amount of people wanting to read about vampires. It's not 2008 anymore, but the thirst is real.
The thirst is very real. And look at the keywords associated with it in the marketing copy. Vampires, danger, revenge, obsession.
All the hits.
All the hits, and a very specific visual, a dark bow.
It feels very aesthetic-driven, like it's designed for a TikTok edit.
It is. But it fits that dangerous world aspect perfectly. The enemy here isn't the guy who stole your parking spot. He's a literal predator. So the friction, the central conflict, comes from the fact that the protagonist is, on a biological level, prey.
We also saw To the Death by Andrea Tang on the list.
A YA fantasy thriller. And again, the title really says it all, doesn't it? To the Death.
It's not beating around the bush.
Not at all. It implies that the enemy dynamic is literal. People are trying to kill each other. And this aligns perfectly with the Goodreads genre definition we found, which notes that the spectrum of this trope goes from mild dislike all the way to people who are literally on opposite sides in a war.
And that's what the fantasy setting allows you to do, right? You can dial the conflict up to an 11 without breaking the reality of the world.
Exactly.
In a realistic fiction book, you can't really have the love interest, burn down the protagonist's village and kill her family and then have them make out later. I mean, you can, but it's a very hard sell.
It's a very, very hard sell. But in fantasy, magic forgives a lot of sins. If there's a generations-long war or a magical curse or a blood oath, you can justify extreme levels of hostility.
And that allows for a much steeper, more dramatic climb to the lovers part of the equation.
A much more satisfying climb for the reader. You aren't just bridging a personality clash. You are bridging a chasm between warring nations.
So if fantasy is all about life or death stakes and magical wars and taming monsters, our next pillar takes those same intense feelings of hatred and obsession, but it shoves them into a much smaller, much more mundane container.
The cubicle.
The dreaded cubicle. Let's move to section 2, modern rivalry. We are trading swords for spreadsheets, and honestly, sometimes this feels even more vicious.
It often is. Because in fantasy, the enemy is usually external, a product of circumstance. In modern rivalry, the enemy is deeply personal.
And what we found is that the enemy in this space usually falls into one of two specific camps.
Right. It's either the ex-lover or it's the workplace competitor.
Yeah. I want to start with the ex-lover, or the second chance enemy, as the sources called it. This is where the characters already have a history.
Right. And this adds a layer of bitterness and unresolved tension that is just delicious to read. We saw great analysis from author Meredith Shore in the Nerd Daily about this. She highlighted a book called Just My Type by Phelan Ballard,
The premise of this book sounds like pure, delicious chaos. You have Lana, who is a relationship columnist.
Right, her whole brand is love.
And Seth, her high school ex-boyfriend, who is now a freelance journalist.
And the setup is a classic forced competition. Their editor pits them against each other for a permanent columnist position.
And the contest is to write articles that go completely against their type.
Exactly. Lana, the relationship expert, has to write about the joys of being single. And Seth, the guy who never commits, has to write about settling down.
And the winner gets the dream job.
So just look at the layers of conflict here. You have the professional rivalry, I want the job you want, and I'm going to beat you to get it. You have the personal history. We dated, it ended badly, there was so much baggage.
With it stuff.
And then you had the thematic conflict. They are being forced, literally for their jobs, to inhabit each other's worldviews, to argue for the other's perspective.
Which forces them to actually understand the other person's perspective, whether they want to or not.
Precisely. And that's the absolute key to the ex-lover variant of this trope. The enemy phase is usually a protective mechanism.
It's a shield.
A big one. I hate you because you hurt me, or I hate you because I don't understand you. The competition forces them to drop that shield and actually look at the person behind it.
There was another one in this vein that sounded, I don't know, a bit sharper, a little more intense. Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead.
Oh yeah, this one felt a bit more gritty. The protagonist, Lee Stone, is a communications director for an electric car company.
Okay.
And the source material has this great detail. It describes her as a stoner, with a capital S for her last name, who drinks guys under the table. She's deliberately built herself to be tough, impenetrable.
She sounds like she has some serious walls up.
Fortifications, really. And her enemy is a guy named Ben Lauderman. They have a history from grad school. She was convinced he cheated on her.
But the outline we have says he didn't.
She thought he did. That's the key. But she retaliated as if he had. The source implies she did something to sabotage his career back then.
Yeah.
So there is this deep, unresolved, I may have ruined your life based on a false premise energy there.
Oof.
That's heavy.
It is.
And now, 5 years later, they're forced to work together on a clean energy bill in Texas.
Okay, Texas politics and clean energy. That is already a high-stress, high-conflict environment before you even add the personal drama.
It is. But think about the setting. It's not a magical forest. It's not a grand ballroom. It's late nights in a stuffy office, cheap takeout food, piles of policy documents, and impossible deadlines.
The forced proximity here is driven entirely by career ambition and political pressure.
And that's so relatable. The feeling of being stuck with someone you can't stand because your job depends on it.
Which brings us to the other side of modern rivalry, the pure workplace romance. I noticed a really strong theme here. In almost all of these books, the characters are described as being really, really good at their jobs, like top of their field.
Yes. This is a crucial insight. In the publishing industry, we call this competence porn.
Competence porn. Okay, yeah, I have to unpack that for the listeners because that sounds very specific.
It's the deep, almost primal attraction to capability. Think about the Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Yeah. This is the absolute gold standard for this subgenre.
A modern classic.
For sure. Lucy and Joshua are assistants to co-CEOs, and they are fighting for the same promotion. They spend their days playing these elaborate mind games.
The staring game, the mirror game, the HR game.
Right. But why is it sexy? Why does it work? It's not just because they're attractive people in an office. It's because Joshua is a worthy opponent for Lucy. If Joshua was bad at his job, if he was lazy or incompetent, Lucy wouldn't be obsessed with him. She'd just be annoyed. She'd be complaining to HR for real.
That's a really, really good point. If your enemy's an idiot, there's no tension. There's just frustration.
Exactly. The tension comes from respect. In the Hating Game, there's a scene where they have to handle a crisis. I think the CEO gets sick before a big presentation, and they just seamlessly, wordlessly work together to manage it.
I remember that.
Watching the other person execute a complex task flawlessly, under pressure, that is the turn. That's the moment the hate starts to feel like something else.
It's the idea that I hate you, but God, I respect you. You're the only other person here who gets it.
And in a modern world where we all deal with so much incompetence, weaponized incompetence, endless bureaucracy, people who just can't get things done, seeing someone who can handle their business becomes a powerful aphrodisiac.
So the enemy phase is actually just a manifestation of frustration, that they're the only other person in the room who works as hard as you do or is as smart as you are.
That's it. You hate them because they are your mirror. They reflect your own ambition and intensity back at you. We see this in Book Lovers by Emily Henry, too.
Another huge one.
Nora is a cutthroat literary agent. Charlie is a brooding, difficult editor. They're both known for being sharks in their industry. Their banter is so sharp because they are sharks.
It's intellectual foreplay.
Essentially, yes. It's a way of proving you can keep up, that you're on the same level before you allow any other kind of intimacy.
Before we leave the modern world, I have to mention one plot that just made me laugh out loud when I read the description. Someone Just Like You by Meredith Shore.
Oh, the doppelganger plot. This one is great.
This is just wild to me. So you have Molly and Jude. They're childhood neighbors who have hated each other for years.
The classic rivals since the sandbox setup. Very foundational.
But the twist is, for the last decade, they have unknowingly been dating people who look exactly like each other.
Which is such a brilliant psychological reveal, isn't it? It suggests that while their conscious brain was screaming, I hate this person, their subconscious was out there saying, this is exactly my type, find me one of these.
It's the thin line between love and hate, made literal and slightly creepy. You hate the person, but you go out and date their clone.
And it creates this incredible awkward tension when their siblings force them to plan their parents' anniversary party together.
They can't escape each other.
No, and they have to reconcile this massive cognitive dissonance. The fact that the person they claim to disguise is actually the blueprint for everyone they've ever loved.
Talk about a serious identity crisis.
Huge. But again, notice the stakes. It's about family, it's about identity, it's about career. It's all very grounded and personal.
Okay, so we've covered the magical wars, and we've covered the office wars. Now I feel like I need to put on a corset. I want to go to a place where you can't just scream at your enemy in the break room. Let's talk Section 3, historical and period romance.
The polite ballrooms.
Where a single raised eyebrow is the equivalent of a punch in the face.
It really is. The repression is the entire point. And here, we have to acknowledge the absolute origin story. The source material from BuzzFeed rightly lists it as the OG. We have to talk about Pride and Prejudice.
Jane Austen, the Queen.
You simply cannot have a conversation about enemies to lovers without Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy.
She is tolerable, I suppose, but not handsome enough to tempt me.
The insult heard round the world for 200 years.
It's just so brutal, but why does this specific dynamic, the Pride and the Prejudice, still work so well in 2026? Why are we still constantly rewriting this one story?
Because it's one of the first and best intellectual enemies to lovers stories. They don't hate each other because of a war or a job or a family feud. They just fundamentally misjudge each other's character.
Right. Elizabeth thinks Darcy is an arrogant, snobbish jerk.
And Darcy thinks Elizabeth's family is uncouth and embarrassing.
And the entire lovers phase, the whole plot, is about them being forced to realize they were wrong.
Exactly. It's a story about moral evolution. Darcy fixes the whole Lydia situation not to win Elizabeth over, but because he realizes he was wrong to judge them all so harshly. And Elizabeth has to confront the fact that she was wrong to trust Wickham.
They become better people because of the friction between them.
Yes, the conflict forces them to grow, and we see the modern echo of this dynamic everywhere. The source mentioned Last Chance Books by Kelsey Rodkey, which is a modern retelling of You've Got Mail.
Which itself is a retelling of the play Parfumery, which has that same DNA.
It's that I hate who you are on paper, but I love who you are in reality dynamic. The anonymous pen pal versus the corporate rival. It's pure Darcy and Lizzie.
But we can't talk historical without talking about the modern behemoth. We have to talk about Bridgerton.
Of course.
Specifically, the source points to Season 2, or the book The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn.
Anthony and Kate. This is the protective older sibling variant of the trope.
Right. Anthony Bridgerton, the famous rake, decides he needs a wife. And he sets his sights on Kate's younger sister, Edwina, because she's the diamond of the season.
She checks all the boxes for him.
And Kate is having absolutely none of it.
Not a chance. She thinks he's a rogue, that he's incapable of real love, and that he'll break her sweet sister's heart. So she sets herself up as the gatekeeper.
The enemy.
And that dynamic is fantastic because it requires constant proximity. He has to get past Kate to get to Edwina, so he has to spend all his time with her.
And the visuals play such a huge role here. The sources kept mentioning the ballroom aesthetic. Why is that setting so crucial for this trope?
Because of the rules. The rigid social etiquette of the Regency era.
Right.
In a modern office, you could have a shouting match. In a fantasy war, you can have a sword fight. In a Regency ballroom, you can't do either of those things.
You have to be polite. You have to dance with the person you loathe.
The tension of the gloved hand. It's everything. When you are forced by social convention to touch your enemy during a waltz, for example, your physical reaction betrays your emotional hostility. It's the body telling a truth that the mind is trying to deny.
That is catnip for readers.
It's the ultimate slow burn. You're just waiting, page after page, for that mask of civility to finally slip.
Now, there is one book in the stack that I thought did a really cool job of bridging the gap between this historical vibe and the modern world.
Oh, Anne of Manhattan.
Yes. The Anne of Green Gables retelling by Brina Starler.
I loved this idea.
I mean, I grew up on Anne of Green Gables. Gilbert Blythe was probably my first fictional crush. But in this version, they are grad school rivals in New York City. How does that work?
It works because Anne and Gilbert were arguably the original academic rivals trope.
He called her carrots, and she broke a slate over his head.
Exactly. Violence in the one-room schoolhouse.
Yeah.
But in Anne of Manhattan, they translate that slate-breaking energy into a thesis competition. Gilbert has been away in California for 5 years, and he comes back to their grad program, and Anne is still holding a massive grudge from a beach bonfire kiss that happened years ago.
It shows that the historical dynamic, that deep-seated, long-term rivalry that's grounded in childhood slights, ports perfectly to modern life.
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
need a carriage to hold a grudge for a decade.
No. And the arc, that grudging piece that slowly, painfully turns into something deeper, is the same whether you're in Avonlea or Manhattan.
Okay, so we've been polite, we've been professional, we've been magical now.
Okay.
I need to ask you about the section of the research that, honestly, I was a little hesitant to even open.
Section 4.
We are going into the shadows. Let's talk about dark romance.
This is a fascinating part of the research because the language that readers and authors use to describe it is so different from the other subgenres.
It really is. The Goodreads list titles alone are a trip. We found lists like Angst Kidnapped Captive with over 200 books on it, and a group description that used the phrase, and I have to quote this exactly because it's so specific, scare-roused.
Scare-roused.
Yeah.
It's a portmanteau of scared and roused. And it perfectly, if bluntly, encapsulates what this subgenre is trying to do.
I have to play the skeptic here for a second, though. We're talking about books where the hero is a stalker or a kidnapper or a mafia boss.
Often, yes.
In the real world, this is a true crime documentary. This is a nightmare scenario. Why are thousands upon thousands of people marking this as their comfort read?
It does feel like a major contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the sources suggest that the danger is the entire point, specifically because it's fictional.
Like riding a roller coaster. You get the thrill because you know the loop-de-loop won't actually kill you.
I think it goes even deeper than that. The analysis we saw on the angst and captive lists suggests it's about the abdication of choice. The abdication of choice. Think about modern life for a minute. It requires constant, exhausting decision-making. Swipe left, swipe right, answer this email, pay that bill, choose the restaurant, decide what to watch.
Decision fatigue is very real.
It's overwhelming. In these captive narratives, the protagonist often loses all control, all agency. The mafia heir kidnaps you. Suddenly, you don't have to decide what to cook for dinner. You don't have to navigate the ambiguity of, does he like me? The choice has been made for you.
So it's a fantasy of a vacation from responsibility.
It's a vacation from agency itself. It's a dark fantasy of total passivity, where the most dangerous, most powerful person in the room is completely and utterly obsessed with you.
That's a very interesting way to frame it. The research pointed us to a book called Disobedient Pawn by Brooklyn Cross.
Right. This one was released back in July 2023, but it has a massive giveaway active in 2026, which shows its staying power. The tagline is, "Loyalty twists, love cuts deep," and it's described as mafia heir romance.
Mafia romances seem to be the primary engine of this whole subgenre.
They are. Because the mafia archetype provides a built-in structure for enemies. If you are from rival families, that's instant conflict. Or if you are an innocent civilian who gets caught up in that world, the power dynamic is instantly shattered. You are, in many cases, literally a captive.
The format listed for Disobedient Pawn was MMFMM.
Which suggests a reverse harem dynamic.
Wait, can you unpack that term for the casual listener who might not be familiar?
Of course. Reverse harem, or sometimes it's called why choose, is a subgenre where the protagonist doesn't have to pick one love interest. She has multiple love interests simultaneously.
Okay.
In a dark romance setting, this usually means she becomes the singular focus of an entire group of dangerous men. It just amplifies the intensity. Instead of one enemy obsessed with you, you have 4 or 5.
And the love part of the enemies to lovers trope acts as the safety bar on that very scary roller coaster.
That's the perfect analogy, because it's a romance novel that eventually these monsters, these killers will bow down to the heroine. The scary mafia heir will burn the world down for her, not with her in it.
So the thrill is standing right on the edge of the cliff, but knowing someone has a firm grip on your belt loop.
Precisely. It's high-risk, high-reward reading. A safe way to explore a very unsafe fantasy.
It is certainly not for everyone, and I think that's important to say out loud. The sources were very clear that this is a specific niche with very specific content and trigger warnings.
Absolutely. It's an extreme. But it sits on the same vast enemies to lovers shelf as Pride and Prejudice. They are very, very distant cousins, but they share that same core DNA, the alchemical transformation of hostility into intimacy.
So we've toured the 4 pillars. We've seen the high-fae lords, the rival journalists, the stuffy viscounts, and the terrifying mafia heirs.
That would be quite a dinner party.
I would pay so much money to see that dinner party. But now we need to synthesize this. What is the common thread? Because aesthetically, these books could not be more different.
I think the author Meredith Shore hit the nail on the head in that guest post we read. She asked the question, what draws us in? And her answer was 3 words: the tension, the banter, the heat.
It's the friction. It's all about the friction.
It is. In a friends to lovers story, which is another huge trope, the transition is often gentle. It's a slow, comfortable realization. Oh, you were here all along.
It's warm and fuzzy.
It's very warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
In enemies to lovers, the transition is a collision. It requires a huge amount of energy. You have to actively overcome resistance, both internal and external. And I think that active resistance makes the eventual surrender feel so much more significant, so much more earned.
There's also the fake dating intersection that kept coming up over and over in the sources.
Yes. The wedding party, the Unhoneymooners, Kiss Her Once for Me. All of these were listed.
Yeah.
And they all combine enemies to lovers with fake dating.
Why do those 2 tropes play so well together? It feels like half of the modern romance books we looked at had both.
Because fake dating solves the biggest logistical problem of the enemies to lovers plot.
Which is?
If I genuinely hate you, I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not going to agree to hold your hand. I'm going to actively avoid you at all costs.
Right. You need an external reason to force them into the same room.
Fake dating provides that reason. It forces the proximity and the intimacy that the enemies dynamic would normally forbid. If we are pretending to be a happy couple for your sister's wedding, well, now I have to hold your hand in front of your grandma.
And once you're holding the hand, you have that moment of, oh, this hand actually fits pretty well in mine.
Exactly. It forces the characters to perform the reality of being lovers until the reality catches up with the performance. It breaks down the walls from the inside out.
We also need to touch on representation here, because looking at the lists, this is not just a heteronormative trope by any stretch.
Absolutely not. And it's thriving in LGBTQ plus romance. We saw Red, White, and Royal Blue in the BuzzFeed list. Prince Henry of England versus Alex Claremont Diaz, the first son of the United States.
An international diplomatic incident that turns into a secret romance.
That is high stakes.
Yeah.
But the dynamic is classic enemies to lovers. They start with a public altercation. They literally fall into a multi-$1,000 wedding cake and are forced into a fake friendship to save face for their countries.
Fake friendship, fake dating. It's all part of that same engine.
It is. And we also saw Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane.
That one is fascinating because it has so many layers to the trope. The main character, Ellie, ends up falling for Jack-a-woman while she is fake dating Jack's brother for financial reasons.
So the enemy aspect is complicated by the deception, the complicated family dynamic, the forbidden nature of it all.
It just shows that the core engine, this idea that intense conflict can breed an equally intense connection, is universal. It works across gender, across genre, across time periods.
It works because conflict is, in itself, a form of intimacy.
Whoa. Hold on, say that again. That feels important.
Conflict is a form of intimacy. Think about it. To truly hate someone, to have a real rivalry with them, you have to pay attention to them. You have to know them. You have to know what makes them tick, what their weaknesses are. You have to be invested in what they do.
Indifference is the real opposite of love.
Exactly. Indifference is the opposite of love. Hate. Hate is just love's angry, noisy neighbor.
That actually explains so much. When you're fighting with someone, you are 100% focused on them.
Completely. You are obsessed with them. You're just processing that obsession through a negative filter. The lover's transition isn't about starting a fire from scratch. It's just about changing the color of the flame that's already burning white hot.
So let's wrap this up. We've traveled from the dangerous fey courts of these immortal vows
to the sterile corporate offices of the hating game.
All the way back to 1800s England.
And then way down into the dark, angsty underworld of the dark romance lists.
It has been a journey, and I think what I'm really taking away from this, the big idea, is that Enemies to Lovers is ultimately just a story about being seen and being challenged.
That's a great final thought.
I mean, think about it. In almost all of these books we discussed, Beach Reads, January Andrews, The Plus One's Jude, the main characters are often stuck in some way before the story starts.
Right. They're bored, or they're cynical, or their life has just become stagnant.
And the enemy is the only force strong enough, the only person disruptive enough to wake them up.
We think we want a partner who just agrees with us, who makes life easy.
Exactly. But maybe, deep down, what we secretly crave is someone who pushes back. Someone who challenges us enough to make us better, or at least to make us feel alive.
Or at the very least, someone who makes the argument interesting.
So is the enemy actually just the only person who truly sees the protagonist for who they are?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
When someone knows exactly how to push your buttons, it's because they took the time to learn where your buttons are.
And that is both terrifying and incredibly exciting.
Which brings us right back to Scare Roused.
Full circle. So here is our question for you, listening right now. Which level of tension is for you? Are you here for the polite, witty bickering of a Bridgerton ballroom?
Do you want the competence porn and the intellectual sparring of a workplace rivalry?
Or are you scrolling the dark romance lists right now looking for something that scares you just a little bit?
There's no wrong answer, but it definitely says something about what you're looking for in an escape.
Check out the stack we've linked on the site for the full list of books we mentioned. There are over 20 titles in there, so your to-be-read pile is about to suffer.
Apologies in advance to your nightstand.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Keep reading.